I'm Jade, and today I'm going to be going over my most anticipated new releases for 2025. I have been feeling this electrifying feeling towards 2025, book-wise, and only book-wise, for months. As more and more releases were announced, the more I realized this might be a very good reading year, because all of these books coming out are either incredibly intriguing to me, gorgeous, or high anticipated releases that I've been waiting for far too long. I have 56 books on this list. 56 books that I am anticipating to read. There's probably more, but these are the ones that I was so jumpy and excited for that I went on to Goodreads and added them to a 2025 list. Some of them I don't know much about, so it might get a little chatty, and other ones I know exactly right off the top of my head. Come on, Silverborn, give it to me. We're going to go ahead and go in order of release date though, not most anticipated, because I'm anticipating all of these. And if we go in release order, you can go to different months and see what's coming out. Some months are more jam-packed, especially the earlier months in the year, because these have been announced and have covers. Other ones are a little bit more sparse, but I am almost equally excited for all of them. I am anticipating, I guess, for this to be a little bit longer, so I grabbed Coco. You should grab Coco. Anything to keep you busy while I chatterbox to you. In order to kind of streamline this a little bit, I'm not gonna go in depth to what every single book is about. Instead, I'll have my Goodreads pulled up so that you can see the synopsis, you can pause, I might read a little bit of it out, and you can kind of get an idea of it and then do your own research from there. But I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you so you can see. We'll go ahead and get into these anticipated releases, starting with January, which is right around the corner. It's telling me that my screen is recording. Hopefully I'm just a little circle on the side. Coming out on January 1st is Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill. There's a couple different reasons this is on my list. First off, the cover of course is gorgeous. That is definitely one of the things that caught my attention. Another is the blurb. It's blurb by T. Kingfisher saying a charmingly monstrous debut. And then it also says that it's cozy mystery, fantasy, adult, historical fiction. We have another thing saying it's by T. Kingfisher. Outstanding new voice in cozy fantasy comes Green Teeth, a tale of fae, folklore, and found family, always gets me, narrated by a charismatic, lake-dwelling monster with a voice unlike any other. Perfect for fans of T. Kingfisher, which is me. I am fans of T. Kingfisher. Beneath the surface of a lake lurks a monster with needle-sharp teeth, hungry and ready to pounce. Jenny Greenteeth has never spoken to a human before, but when a witch is thrown into her lakes, something makes Jenny decide she's worth saving. Temperance doesn't know why her village has suddenly turned against her, only that it has something to do with the malevolent new pastor. Okay. We're also getting to witchcraft here. I'm ready for this. This sounds really cool. January 1st, and I like both covers, so either way I'm excited. A Language of Dragons coming out on January 2nd. At the top it says it's coming out January 7th, and at the bottom it says January 2nd. I'm gonna go ahead and go with January 2nd because that's sooner and I'm excited for it. The reason why this is on my list is actually because it's a dragon book and it is our dragon book pick for Dragons and Draconathon, which is a Fable book club that me and my friend Soleil run. So I'll have that link down below if you'd like to join us and also read this, but we're not reading it right away. We take 2 months per dragon book. If the first book is January to February, this should be March to April. So we'll be reading this in the spring just to give people enough time to get the book since it's a new release. January is a bit soon. What is this about? London, 1923, dragons soar through the skies and protests erupt on the streets. But Vivian's feather swallow isn't worried. She's going to follow the rules, get an internship studying dragon language, love that, and make sure her little sister never has to risk growing up third class. By midnight, Viv has started a civil war. Sounds good. This is actually Soleil's pick, so I won't take credit for it, but when she found it, I was like, yeah, I'm in, I'm good. I'm ready. This says that it's young adult, fantasy, dragons, historical fiction. I kind of got that from London 1923 bit. It also is listed under romantasy, but people can get pretty liberal with that, so I don't know. It also has a page count of 480. The next is Adrienne Young's A Sea of Unspoken Things. This one's actually just because I keep seeing Adrienne Young pop up a lot in fantasy books. She seems to be kind of an overall darling, a crowd favorite. Go ahead and see what other books she has. Fable is a big one. Sky in the Deep I did read, and that was a very solid 3-star for me. I was like, yes, this is fine, this is Vikings. It didn't stick in my memory, but it wasn't bad. Spells for Forgetting was a really big one that I heard a lot of people talking about. Namesake is the duology. She's got quite the backlist. This one in particular, a woman investigates her brother's mysterious death while coming to terms with her own haunting past. In this atmospheric novel, the only thing James and Johnny Golden have ever had is each other. For as long as she can remember, James's deep connection with her twin brother, John Johnny has gone beyond intuition. She can feel what he feels. Oh, I like that magic touch. That's a pressure point for me. I like that. So when Johnny is killed, nope, don't like that. So when Johnny is killed in a tragic accident, James knows before her phone rings that her brother is gone and that she's alone, truly alone for the first time in her life. Miserable. Hate that for her. I do really love that bond or connection between two people, like a soulmate-esque, but in the platonic sense. That also seems really sad. But I might also really like it depending on the atmosphere. It says it's atmospheric. What is the atmosphere? Is the atmosphere sadness? It's fantasy, mystery, magical realism, mystery thriller. Next one, I know I'm excited for this one. These names really stood out to me because I looked into it and Shannon Lee is Bruce Lee's daughter. If I'm wrong about that, I'll put some sort of editing note, but like the fact that Shannon Lee is Bruce Lee's daughter, that it uses characters and teachings created by Bruce Lee, love that. And Fonda Lee, I know specifically for Jade City, which is a much beloved fantasy series with like really intricate politics and world building. I haven't gotten to it yet. I started it and it had Jade, like the word Jade, like 17 times in the first like few pages, which is fair because I think it's like their currency and possibly their magic system. That's my name. And seeing it so many times, it was just like I was numb to the idea. And listening to it audibly, not an option. So I just need to wait for the right time. This book, Breath of the Dragon, sounds like I could listen to it without constantly perking up at my name. Fantasy, young adult, dragons, young adult fantasy, fiction, high fantasy. Asian literature. 16-year-old June dreams of proving his worth as a warrior in the Elite Guardian tournament, held every 6 years to entrust the magical scroll of Earth to a new protector. Eager to prove his skills, June hopes that a win will result in his father's honor, righting a horrible mistake that caused their banishment from his home, mother, and twin brother. That's our second twin brother in a row. Look at us with all these twins. But June's father strictly forbids him from participating. There is no future in honing his skills as a warrior, especially considering June is not breath-marked, born with a patch of dragon scales, and blessed with the special ability like his twin. Also, that cover is absolutely stunning. I love it. Readers also enjoyed A Language of Dragons. No kidding. That's that one, coming out January 7th. And then moving on to Daughters of Chaos by A.S. Webb. Oh my god, that cover. I know that that's why I added this. This book could have been about anything. But it's not. It's about something. So let's find out more together. For mortals to be free, the gods must fall in this sweeping epic fantasy debut. Sold. Was sold by the cover, but still being sold. In ancient Greece, mortals suffer under the tyranny of the gods, forced to sacrifice the food that they depend on, their worldly possessions, and even each other at the whim of the 12. But an ancient prophecy speaks of hope, of one who will set humankind free. And then looks like it has lots of fantasy words and intrigue and that cover. Genres: fantasy, mythology, fiction, adult, Greek fantasy, romantasy. I'm telling you, they just throw it in there. I don't know. This might be romantasy. I don't know. 465 pages, hardcover. It says I read this. I have not read this. That's a lie. I'll figure this out later. Goodreads is dumb. After this, we have another dragon book. This is The Baby Dragon Cafe. If you haven't noticed, I do really love a good dragon book. I based an entire readathon around it and continuously co-host a book club. This is a cozy romance. I do believe that it is romance. I've heard it touted that way quite often. This is by Amna Qureshi, and it says the perfect read for fans of Pumpkin Spice Cafe and Legends and Lattes. I am the latter half. I'm a fan of Legends and Lattes. When Saphira opens up her cafe for baby dragons and their humans, she wasn't expecting it to be so difficult to keep the fires burning. It turns out young dragons are not the best magical animals to keep in a cafe, and replacing all that burnt furniture is costing Saphira more than she can afford from selling dragon roasted coffee. Is it like dragons and their owners just come kind of like a dog cafe where you can have your animals with you? Or is it like a cat cafe where you go in and you can like pet the baby dragons and then maybe take one home? I do think it's adorable. I did think it was a middle grade for the longest time because of this cover, but it says romance is on the menu. It sounds really cute and it's got dragons and it comes out January 16th. Ooh, this one has my full attention. I loved this cover, but I also really loved the synopsis. A woman inherits a pawn shop where you can sell your regrets and then embarks on a magical journey when a charming young physicist wanders into the shop in this dreamlike and enchanting fantasy novel. What this reminds me of is Before the Coffee Gets Cold, where there's like a coffee shop, a pawn shop, some sort of store of magical antiquity, and like you have to go there and there's certain rules around it. Yeah, and it also takes place in Tokyo on the backstreet streets of Tokyo lies a pawn shop. And I live in Japan, if you are just tuning in. I live in Japan. I love stories set in Japan, and it's very interesting to me now that I live here, reading literature like after having spent so much time here and understanding the culture very differently from when I first was reading about Japan. So yeah, I'm drawn to them more than I ever was. Next up is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Me and Grady Hendrix, we aren't bad. I enjoy Grady Hendrix, but I always think I'm going to enjoy a Grady Hendrix more than I do. So I feel like illogical amount of betrayal for this person who has done me no specific wrong. Leading into that, I am still willing to give this a try, but it's also witchcraft, and guys, I grew up pagan and it's hit or miss for me. I get really picky, really sensitive. It's completely on me. I can't help it, but it's also going to be probably popular, and I really like the cover, and I always want to give Grady Hendrix a try. This is also on January 14th. All right, anyway, there's power in a book. They call them wayward girls, loose girls. Oh, see, girls who grew up too fast, and they're sent to the Wellwood home in St. Augustine, Florida, where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret. Give them up for adoption, or most important of all, to forget any of it ever happened. This is an important topic. I want these voices to be heard. Grady Hendrix always writes from a voice that is never his own on really sensitive topics that I feel like could be covered by someone else. That is something that grades me about Grady Hendrix. Every single book, he really touts knowledge as if it is own voices, and I never think that he does a superior job, because he never can and he never will. The times where he's writing from something he knows a little bit more intimately, you can see it pop off on the page, but I'm not impressed by his writing of women and people of color. I think that he does a just okay job. He's not being incredibly offensive. I'm just always wondering why. His writing of those topics always makes me wonder why. This is my most anticipated release video. I'm not trying to go off on Grady Hendrix. I know you all love him. I'll probably like this book just fine, but that is always in the background. But it's probably also good. I don't know. Horror, fantasy, witches, adult thriller. Let's move on. Our winter monster. I have no recollection of why this is on my list. Let's find out together. This is a chilling holiday horror about an unhappy couple running from their problems and straight into the maw of a terrifying beast. Perfect for fans of Paul Tremblay and Sarah Gran. Okay, so it's a holiday horror, and this is obviously coming out after the fact, so I might read it at the butt end of next year. I don't know. I could read it sooner too. I'm also really finding that I do enjoy horror. I still haven't found my exact taste yet though, so I end up with more disappointments in the thriller, suspense, and horror genre, but I'm drawn to this one, partially because of the cover, and I want to know more. But not that much more, because actually just knowing like it's a couple that are possibly being terrorized by a monster during the holidays is enough for me. Let's go ahead and move on. We are finally out of January and into February. Voices Like a Hyacinth by Mallory Pearson. This says this is a LGBTQ horror, and it says witches and adult. 5 young women eager for success rely on the unspeakable to make their dreams come true in a chilling novel about martyrdom, ritual, and obsession by the author of We Ate the Dark. Art student Jo Kozak and her fellow classmate and best friend Caroline Finch, Amrita, and Saz are one another's muses, so close they have their own language and so devoted to the craft that they'll do anything to keep their inspiration alive. Even if it means naively resorting to the occult, you should not do that naively, to unlock their creativity and to curse their esteemed, if not notoriously, creepy professor. I'm getting dark academia as well, a little bit of The Craft like the old movie. I also am getting a little bit of Bunny. I don't know if I'm setting expectations too high by saying that. It comes out February 1st, so hopefully, eventually, I find out. Next, on February 18th, Hungerstone is a thrilling, seductive, sapphic romance for fans of S.T. Gibson's A Dowry of Blood and Emily Hart's Wayward. Wasn't a huge fan of Wayward, but a lot of people are, so was a huge fan of this cover, as well as the word Hungerstone actually like elicited an emotion out of me when I heard it. Someone said Hungerstone in one of their videos, and I was instantly tuned in. For what do we hunger, Lenore? Lenore is the wife of steel magnate Henry, but 10 years into their marriage, the relationship has soured and no child has arrived to fill the distance growing between them. I don't think you should need a child in order to fill that distance, but let's move on. Henry's ambitions take them out to London and to the imposing Nethershall Manor in the countryside, where Henry aims to host a hunt with society's finest. Lenore keeps a terrible secret from the last time her husband hunted, and though they never speak of it, it haunts their marriage to this day. Very, very, very interested in this. Set against a violent wilderness of the moors and uncontrolled appetite of the Industrial Revolution, Hungerstone is a compulsive feminist reworking of Carmilla, the book that inspired Dracula. I have not read Carmilla. I've heard so much good about Carmilla in this past year. Like, she has been very talked about this year. So I might also be reading Carmilla, but that's neither here nor there because this is a new releases video and Carmilla is ancient, both literally and figuratively. But this is horror, fantasy, vampires, gothic, lesbian, queer, historical fiction. This sounds so good. I'm reacquainting myself with this and I am very excited for this one, and I'm even all the more excited that it's coming out fairly soon. Cursebound. This one I can say pretty quickly. I saw a lot of buzz for the first Feybound book by Sarah L. Arifi, and I just wanted to keep my finger on the pulse in knowing about this book because it wasn't until recently that I found out that the first book was queer. I don't know how I missed it. I missed like a lot of things about this book. I did go into it thinking it was the romantasy that have been coming out lately, like Fey style romantasy, but when I actually read about book 1, I became increasingly interested. So I am just keeping tabs on the fact that book 2 is coming out, maybe want to read them back to back or together, and this is letting you know that book 2 is coming out if you haven't heard about it. I'm not going to read too much because this is the second book, and I haven't read the first, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, but it's coming February 18th. Next we have Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister, and this is the same author as Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which is in my top 5 favorites for sure of 2024. I loved Wrong Place, Wrong Time. It completely took me by surprise. This was one of the things that opened me up to being like, I should be reading more thrillers, and now I've just been seeking the thrill of reading that book and nothing has compared. Luckily, the same author is coming back with another thriller, and it is called Famous Last Words on February 25th. It's June 21st, the longest day of the year, and the life of new mother Camilla is about to change forever. After months of maternity leave, she will drop off her infant daughter to daycare for the first time and return to her job as a literary agent, finally. But when she wakes, her husband Luke isn't there, and in his place is a cryptic note. Then it starts. Breaking news. A hostage situation is developing in London. The police tell her Luke is involved, but he isn't the hostage. Her husband, doting father, eternal optimist, is the gunman. I'm ready. I'm willing. Take me. Have me. Gillian McAllister. Swordheart. You might be wondering, why is Swordheart on this list? It's already come out. This is one of T. Kingfisher's oldest backlist books. Absolutely it is. It's also one of my favorite books of T. Kingfisher, and the hardcover of Swordheart has been so hard to get a hold of. I've had 3 different people come to Japan and visit me, and I've requested this book each time as like permission granted into my home. None of them have been able to get their hands on it. I had to let them in anyway. So the reason why this is on my list is because there is a new edition coming out and I'm very excited for it. It comes out February 25th and it's just different edition of Swordheart. So cozy. It was something where I had no idea where the story was going. It meanders in just the most wonderful way. I never wanted it to end. I was hanging out with my friends. I was enjoying my life. There is an actual plot. Did I care if we ever reached its conclusion? No, I just wanted to read it forever. This cover is stunning. I love this. In case you're wondering what Swordheart is about, you can either read the synopsis or I'll just tell you. A woman is about to stab herself with a giant like broadsword, and the opening image of this, you would think that that's upsetting. It's technically a trigger warning for me. She so awkwardly is holding the sword that it becomes one of these things where you're like, oh girl, what are you doing? Do you need help? And then a man comes out of the sword. He is a soul bonded to the sword and he like lives in it, like a genie lamp situation. He's like a sworn soldier. She's technically supposed to get an inheritance, but her family is battling it out with her. Therefore, she has to go find a lawyer monk in a city, and they're just traveling around, doing things, meeting people, being wonderful. And that is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. It's already out. You can read it now, but if you want the physical copy, it's a little harder to get, and now we're gonna be able to get it, hopefully. Next up, ooh, we're in March now. Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens. This cover is not speaking to me, so I'm honestly just curious. Like, I'm intrigued by the fact that this is on my list because I don't know why it's here. Fantasy, romance, young adult, romantasy, queer, fiction. Okay, tell me more, but don't tell me everything. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue meets This Is How You Lose the Time War That will get me. That's it. In this fantastical love story that defies death as two souls reincarnate through the centuries. That told me exactly why this book is on my list. I love reincarnation tropes. I love souls, soulmates, reincarnating souls. I love This Is How You Lose the Time War, was absolutely obsessed. I was also a huge fan of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I completely understand and agree with the criticisms about it. I still had a lovely, wonderful time. They've loved each other in 1,000 timelines. They've killed each other in every one. No, not reading the rest of the synopsis. I'm definitely picking this up. Now I understand. Is there a different cover? I am sorry that I'm such a cover. Oh, I wish I was better at it. This exists? This is my cover. How do I get this one? I say it as if I can get all of these covers really easily. In Japan, this is so expensive. Books physically are so expensive that like 90% of the books I read are not physical copies. Oh my gosh, look at this. Ooh, look at this. Even as I get closer, they've loved each other for 1,000 years. They killed each other in every one. That's such a good tagline. I've written my own book now, and now I understand how important taglines are, and that's such a good one. Like, that does immediately make me want to pick it up, which I can do on, it looks like, this one says February 27th. Depending on where you are, it's either March or February. Hopefully, that'd be great if it was for me. I'm putting it in the March slots, though. This could also be out in February. I don't know. We have Tea You at the Altar, which is number 3 in Tomes and Tea. I have not read the first book in Tomes and Tea, which is You Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. I just wanted to put it on everyone's radar that the third book is indeed coming out. I'll be reading the first one hopefully this year. It's on my 25 and 25 book list, which I can go ahead and link down below in case you're wondering my top books that I'm trying to read in 2025. This is essentially for fans of Legends and Lattes. 2 women open a tea shop together, and it's set in a fantasy world, and they have antics and small town problems and possibly war with a queen. I don't remember. Oh, this is one of the big ones. I'm very excited for anything Ava Reid. I just finished another Ava Reid book. She has solidified herself as a favorite author of mine. For sure be talking about favorites, but Ava Reid has just risen up so quickly for me. She's such an impressive person, and her writing is so bone deep phenomenal. I am impressed by her forever. She could write 10 shit books in a row, and I would think that she was a god. Apart from it being a big name and a gorgeous cover, I also loved the synopsis. It's a standalone dystopian romance about survival, sacrifice, and love that risks it all. By encouraging massive accumulations of debt from its underclass, a single corporation, Karis, controls all aspects of society. Inessa lives with her brother in a half-sunken town where they scrape by running a taxidermy shop. Unbeknownst to Inessa, their cruel and indolent mother has accrued an enormous debt, enough to qualify one of the children for Karis's live-streamed assassination spectacle, the Lamb's Gauntlet. So a little bit of, like it says, Songbirds and Snakes. I was thinking Hunger Games. Sounds really good. Next, Faithbreaker is coming out. This should be, I believe, the 3rd and final book. I believe that it's a trilogy in the Fallen Gods, and Hannah Kaner has had my heart with Godkiller. In order not to spoil anything, because I think it can be a bit of a spoiler, Godkiller follows Kissin, who is a god killer. She slays gods for a living. Gods have fallen from the world. There was a massive war, and she's like picking off last known gods. And another character who is bonded to a god of white lies, and the two have to travel together to an altar to try and separate them. I love Skedi, the god of white lies. Absolutely adored Skedi, but they are the god of white lies, so sometimes they do little white lie bad things. Book 2 was just okay for me, but book 3 I'm looking forward to because book 2 really set up book 3. Definitely suffered from middle book syndrome, but it did make me still excited for book 3. So it's on the list, and I'm gonna go ahead and click off and go to the next. So the next one is Oh Sinners. There was a couple things that just like spoke to me. This isn't my typical cover that I would go for. Obviously, like I like very gorgeous covers, but something about this really did speak to me. I liked this cover and the colors in it and the title as well. This says, a journalist investigates its seductive and mysterious cult and its leader, enigmatic Vietnam War veteran, in this not to be missed novel. Because this is mystery and thriller kind of cult, I don't want to know too much more about it. I think that that's about all I've known this entire time, and I kind of want to keep it that way. It is coming out March 18th, and I will be keeping my eye on it for sure, but I don't want to know too much more. I'm leaving it there. You can read the synopsis if you'd like. Oh, my battery's dying. I'll do this next one really quickly because I don't have too much to say about it. It seemed really interesting. It's science fiction mystery. It's called Murder by Memory. That is a very long synopsis by Olivia Waite and Blair Baker. I heard really great things, I think, about the audiobook because I have this saved as an audiobook. It's a cozy spaceborne mystery helmed by a nonsense formidable auntie of a detective. That's enough for me to be interested, and if you want to look at the synopsis, you totally can. March 20th, we have The Starving Saints. Why, yes, I was interested in the cover, but more. I was also interested in the genre, the fact that it was queer, that it was horror. It says, Amar Castle has been under siege for 6 months. Food is running low and there has been no sign of rescue. But just as survivors consider deliberately thinning their numbers, the castle stores are replenished, the sick are healed, and the divine figure of the constant lady and her saint have arrived, despite the barricade gates, offering succor in return for adoration. A horror fantasy. It's like set at a castle. It seems very different, and I feel like it's going to play with its genres, and it just sounded really compelling and interesting, and come on now. Look at that cover. Next, again in the end of March, March 25th, This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. I haven't read a lot of her backlist, but I did read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and I liked it well enough. It wasn't a 5-star for me, but I, again, have chasing Gillian McAllister's books, so I'm hoping that this one speaks to me more. It's the most famous crime in modern history, but only she knows the true story. After the unexpected death of her father, college student Jane Sharp longs for a distraction from her grief. She becomes obsessed with true crime, befriending armchair detectives who teach her how to hunt killers from afar. Morbid internet underground, Jane finds friendship, purpose, and even glory. I think that that's a really interesting synopsis. I personally am not a huge fan of true crime, and I have also had people personally affected by people trying to find out true crime stories, family members, and I'm a little wary, but I also did want to check out more Ashley Winstead. I'll probably keep an eye on who is reading this one, what they're thinking of it. I'll probably listen to a few like spoiler-free reviews to start to get more tone ideas, but it does sound interesting. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about that comes out in March is The Vipers by Katie Hayes. This cover, man. I swear, I am one of those people where you go, don't judge a book by its cover. I did already. I already love this book. Let it disappoint me. I'm gonna read it. So this is best-selling author of The Cloisters. Comes this electrifying thriller about an affluent family whose annual retreat to Italy is shattered when a decade-old murder resurfaces. Think The Talented Mr. Ripley meets Succession meets The White Lotus. I am a fan of White Lotus, and I've been recommended Succession quite a few times. On the glittering Isle of Capri, anything can be a mirage, but one thing is true, there's nothing deadlier than a family with everything to lose. I love a good family dynamics book. I like thrillers that have a more interesting or like atmospheric setting. Yeah, this could be really good. It might not just be a cover buy. It might actually be like something I really enjoy. That's the end of March. I am going to charge my camera up a little bit, and then I'm gonna hit you up with April through hopefully December. All right, I'm back. We're back. My screen recording is back. We are headed into April. So April Fools, here's Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. Really just a well-known author. That's why it's on here. I'm hoping to find an entry point. The cover didn't speak to me, but because she is so beloved for Atlas 6, it's on my list. Where there's a will, there's a war. Thayer Wren, the brilliant CEO of Ren Fair, Magitech, and so-called father of modern technology, is dead. Any one of his 3 telepathically and electrokinetically gifted children would be a plausible inheritor to the Ren Fair throne, or at least so they like to think. Okay, actually, I am really interested in this. I like this premise. It actually is speaking to me more than Atlas 6 did. This seems really interesting. Adult children having disputes and disagreements. I don't really see this kind of mashup very often. Something about the art on the cover also gives me the feeling that it maybe has like retrofuturism. That's just based off of the cover's clothing. Yeah, no, this sounds really good. Comes out April 1st and looks like to be quite the chunker at 512 pages. Here it says science fiction, magic, urban fantasy, contemporary adult fantasy. Oh, The Last Session by Julie Bartz. Julie Bartz is the author of The Writing Retreat, which has such polarizing views, but I read it. I thought it was absolutely bonkers, but I enjoyed my time reading it. I feel like I either gave it a 3.5 for the ending being a bit meh, or a 4 for the good time that it provided. It wasn't amazing. It was just fun to read. This also says it comes out on April 1st, and the synopsis says, when a catatonic woman shows up to the psychiatric unit, social worker Theo swears she knows her from somewhere. She's shocked to discover the patient holds a link to a traumatic timeline in her past. Upon regaining lucidity, the patient claims she can't remember the horrific recent events that caused her brain to shut down. Thea's at a loss, especially when the patient is ripped away from her as suddenly as she appeared. It just sounds interesting. I think that Julia Bartz is willing to just kind of mess around with thrillers. I'm just kind of curious to see what she comes up with next and to see if it follows the same reaction from the book community as The Writing Retreat. This is A Drop of Corruption, book 2 in the Shadow of Leviathan series. Book 1 is on my 25 and 25 reads, so I might want to read them back to back, as well as letting you know if you haven't already. The first book seems to be a mashup of murder mystery, detective, Sherlock vibes, and fantasy, and people have said they've really enjoyed the dynamic between the two detectives, as well as wanting to see burgeoning of the fantasy world itself, and it being a trilogy is a pretty good sign that it might exactly do that. So also coming out, it looks like, on April 1st. Fantasy, mystery, fiction, adult thriller, queer. After that, April 8th, we have A Palace Near the Wind by Ai Jiang. A Palace Near the Wind just sounded absolutely gorgeous. It's also a novella, it looks like, and it says, sometimes called windwalkers for the ability to command the wind. Unlike their human rulers, Fang people have bark faces, carved limbs, arms of braided branches, and hair of needle threads. Gosh, that's so pretty. Bound by duty and tradition, Liu, the eldest princess of the Fang royalty, is the next bride to the human king. I always kind of drawn to political marriages, not marriages technically of convenience, alignments, treaties, things like that. Just be a really interesting dynamic. It sounds like this woman is made of wood and that she's not a woman at all, but she's a tree. So I would like to see how this man deals with being married to a tree and how this tree deals with being married to a human. A short story novella. It says it's only 192 pages, so putting it on my radar, putting it on yours. Boys with Sharp Teeth by Jenny Howell. We Were Liars meets The Raven Boys in this mind-bending YA debut about dark revenge, twisted desire, and the sinister secrets lurking behind the walls of an elite boarding school. I will open the synopsis for you. I'm leaving it personally there. I did enjoy the cover, but was that it was compared to The Raven Boys that got my attention, and then the overall vibes in the boarding school aspect. I do like boarding schools, especially since I have never been to one, so I haven't had to deal with the repercussions of having gone to a boarding school. It says, oh, did not know this, probably because I did not read the synopsis like many of you might have. Young adult, mystery, fantasy, vampires, paranormal, romance, mystery thriller. So it's got vampires in there. And now I'm looking at this and going, well, of course, boys with sharp teeth could have been more metaphor. I guess they meant it literally. On April 8th, we have The God's Time Forgot by Kelsey Sheridan Gonzalez. And this is an Irish mythology, collides with Gilded Age New York in a sweeping debut enemies to lovers historical romantasy, perfect for fans of Outlanders and fake Inked in Blood. That is not usually a selling point for me, but something about the idea of having Irish mythology blended in with Gilded Age New York, I just think that that's a gorgeous concept, and I'd love to see that played out, and so it really drew my attention. It says Manhattan, 1870, Rua knows only two. There must be a spelling error. Am I just dyslexic? Manhattan, Rua knows only two, her name and that she has no memories. So when the wealthy Harrington family mistakes Rua for their missing daughter, Emma, Rua goes along with the charade, hoping for answers about who she really is, as she tries to blend into a society she doesn't remember. She's drawn to a firmly off-limits Lord of Dunor, a newcomer to Manhattan society who is somehow familiar with Rua. Mostly just the concept of the genre blending put this on my list. I feel like this could be one of my fluff reads. Next, I'll make this right quick because I don't want you to have any spoilers. Saga Volume 12 is coming out. I am up to date with the Saga series, very much so. Love Saga. It's like a Romeo and Juliet space opera, traumatic and gorgeous. Lying cat is a cat that can tell when you're lying, and so many things have happened since the first book that I will not tell you a thing about this one, but you should go read Volume 1 of Saga. Next, we have on April 22nd, When the Wolf Comes to Call by Nat Cassidy. Oh, I do remember reading the synopsis, and I wanted to keep reading because I wanted to know everything was going to be okay, and I don't know that it will be. One night, Jess, a struggling actress, finds a 5-year-old runaway hiding in the bushes outside her apartment. After a violent, bloody encounter with the boy's father, she and the boy find themselves running for their lives. As they attempt to evade the boy's increasingly desperate father, horrifying incidents of butchery follow them. At first, Jess thinks she understands what they're up against, but she's about to learn there's more to these surreal and grisly events than she could have ever imagined, and that when the wolf finally comes home, none will be spared. Horror, adult, fiction, fantasy, Halloween, thriller. It sounds really good. It also only comes in at 304 pages. Yes, the cover is really cool, but also that synopsis, like, it got something out of me. After that, When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vida Kelly. This is expected out on April 22nd, and it is queer fantasy romance, historical fiction. In Coney Island, true love arises to the surface. With lush illustrations and buoyant prose, Vanessa forges an unforgettable New York fairy tale. Yes, the cover, but also the vibes. It's displaying so much about what this book is about. I haven't really seen anything like it. There's a movie that I'm thinking of, and that's the only thing I was kind of able to pull from. This sort of vibe is what I have in my head currently. Oh, of course. This is Silverborn, The Mystery of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. I have been anticipating this book for years. Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend is the first in the Nevermore series and is absolutely whimsical, fantastic, heartwarming. I talk about it a lot, so it should be, if you are familiar with my channel, this shouldn't come as a surprise to you. If you're new to my channel, I really love the Nevermore series. It is a middle grade series. It's packed with like a lot really interesting storylines and family dynamics and a gigantic cat. Do a bit of self-care and go read the Nevermore series. And the next book is coming out on April 25th. I do believe it is actually going to come out. It's been delayed a few times. I have a bit of a trust issue, but I also know it's not Jessica's fault. She did get sick. Writing takes time. I really hope this book is coming out in April. I'm just very excited and hopeful. After that, we have The Staircase in the Woods, and the title actually got me interested in this one, by Chuck Wendig. A group of friends investigate the mystery of a strange staircase in the woods in this mesmerizing horror novel. 5 high school friends are bonded by an oath to protect one another no matter what. We got some found family, friendship vibes. Then, on a camping trip in the middle of the forest, they find something, a mysterious staircase to nowhere. One friend walks up and never comes back down. Then the staircase disappears. Feels like an adult version of possibly like the Wayward Children series. I like that it's horror and mystery thriller, that it's adult. I really want to see like what happens here. That is hopefully coming out April 29th. This next one is interesting. Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. This is by Kylie Lee Baker. This says, in this explosive horror novel, a woman is haunted by inner trauma, hungry ghosts, and a serial killer as she confronts the brutal violence experienced by East Asians during the pandemic, which I think is really interesting for a lot of reasons. I am interested to see people's different art that was formed from the pandemic. I think enough time has passed for me personally to kind of delve into that and understand other people's experiences while this was all going on, because it was such a widespread thing, but it was also something that was happening to all of us individually, and so it was very hard to consume anything having to do with it. I do notice that it has a possible trigger for me, which is suicide, so I'll be going into this warily. It says, Cora Zhang is a crime scene cleaner, washing away the remains of brutal murders and suicides in Chinatown. But none of these seem so terrible when she's already witnessed the most horrific thing possible. Her sister, Delia, being pushed in front of a train. That is horrible. Before seeing the scene, the murderer shouted 2 words, Bat Eater. I am really interested to read about other people's experiences during the pandemic. A lot of people dealt with the pandemic in absolutely atrocious ways. It wasn't everyone trying their best. There were plenty of people doing their worst. I don't want to just look away. I am interested in knowing other perspectives. Next, The Lord of Demons by Evan Winter. Please, Evan, please let this be true. This is also one of my most anticipated releases. This is an auto by author for me. I'm ready for the adrenaline rush. I'm ready to be upset with Tao. I'm ready to root for Tao. Please let this book actually come out. It doesn't have a cover, which is scary, but this isn't coming till May. So maybe after this video is published, he'll have an announcement. I don't know. I really want this to come out, and so it's on the list for the sake of hope and desperation. This is an African-inspired fantasy dragon novel with adrenaline, fight scenes, revenge, just a lot of emotional impact in this series. It's one of my absolute all-time favorites. You'll never catch me saying a bad word about Rage of Dragons, and I've been waiting for Lord of Demons for a long time. Evan Winter did put out a post saying that he was going to be delaying it, that he just wanted to make his best happen for this book, and I want him to take his time. I want it to be exactly how he envisioned it. I don't want him to feel rushed, but someone stuck May 8th on here, and I just hope that it's true. The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. Emily Tesh is actually a new to me author. However, I'm going to be picking up The Greenwood soon, and I've been told I'm going to absolutely adore it. This is going to be a full-length novel, possibly her first. Don't don't quote me on that. It says, "Look at you, eating magic like you're one of us." Dr. Walden is the director of magic at Chetwood Academy and one of the most powerful magicians in England. Her days consist of meetings, teaching A-level invocation to 4 talented chaotic sixth formers, more meetings, and securing the school's boundaries from demonic incursions. Adult, lesbian, queer, urban fantasy. It sounds really fun, to be perfectly honest, and the way that she's so beloved by everyone who's read her short stories and novellas, I want to read this very soon. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Rachel Gillig has been a beloved author by many people recently, and I saw this cover and was like, this is my in. The title having night in it, I am huge on nights. I know that they were probably absolute shits, but I do really love a night in a book. Just scour away all of their horribleness and just give me a really chivalrous night. This says, Sybil Delling has spent 9 years dreaming of having no dreams at all. Like the other founding girls who traded a decade of service for a home in the great cathedral, Sybil is a diviner. In her dreams, she receives visions from 6 unearthly figures known as omens. From them, she can predict terrible things before they occur, and lords and common folk alike travel across the kingdom of Trom's windswept moors to learn their futures by her dreams. That sounds eerie and gorgeous, exactly like the cover. I really want to see what this author is about. It is romantasy, but it's also gothic, fantasy, and I hope it's what I'm picturing it to be, because it sounds like a possible favorite. I've seen it on a lot of other people's lists as well. People will probably pick it up faster than me because Rachel Gillig is probably one of their auto-buy authors, and for me, she's just highly intriguing. Next, My Ex the Antichrist by Craig D. Louis. Honestly, just liked the title a lot. It says, musician learns her ex-boyfriend is the biblical Antichrist. She must find a way to stop him before he grows powerful enough to end the world. Daisy Jones and the Six meets the Omen in this novel about music, love, free will, and the apocalypse. Something about this just hits a different part of me that I feel like I don't show on BookTube enough. That's kind of my roots as far as me hanging out with my dad goes. We just watched horror movies and listened to heavy metal. So there's just a little child part of me that thinks My Ex the Antichrist is right up my alley, and I plan on soothing her. Maybe I can recommend it to my dad. Okay, next, Maggie Stiefvater is an auto-buy author for me. I do love Maggie Stiefvater. She's recently let me down, but I can't help it. I love her. The Listeners is her adult debut. She is a young adult fantasy writer, and I think she'll do really well in the adult space. But this is January 1942. The Avalon Hotel and Spa offers elegance and sophistication in an increasingly ugly world. Run with precision by June Hudson, the hotel's West Virginia-born and bred general manager, the Avalon is where high society goes to see and be seen, and where the mountain sweet water in the fountains and spas can wash away all your troubles. This is historical fantasy, magical realism, adult. It also says it's a mesmerizing portrait of an irresistible heroine, an unlikely romance, and a hotel and a world in peril. She writes such interesting things, and she messes around with fiction so much. It says historical fiction, and that could mean anything. I have pretty high hopes and high expectations, but the Dreamer series, which followed Ronan Lynch, my favorite character in the Raven Cycle series, was a huge disappointment for me, so I'm a bit bittersweet on this. I think she's going to do really well. I'm expecting to like it. And that's June 3rd. Getting closer to the summertime. Things are heating up. Next, also on June 3rd, is A Mastery of Monsters by Lizelle Sambury. This is actually, when I first added this, the cover wasn't revealed, so this is my first time seeing the cover, and I absolutely love it. I actually added this because Lizelle Sambury has a YouTube channel, and I adore watching her content, and I believe that I have watched her write this book because she's been working on projects. I think that's lovely, and that's fun. I'm incredibly biased. I do have a YouTube channel, and I do write my book on here. Ninth House meets Legendborn in this thrilling first book in a dark academia fantasy series about a teen who's willing to do anything to find her brother, even infiltrate a secret society full of monsters. I'll drop the synopsis down so you can read it, but honestly, I'm just excited to pick it up. In case you are familiar with her other works, Blood Like Magic is one that she has written, as well as Delicious Monsters, which I'm gonna go ahead and click this now because I also have wanted to read this one and I've heard really good things. She's a well-to-do author, and I'm excited to read her. Next, clearly this wasn't a cover by. For some reason I added it, and I don't know why yet. It says The Myth Makers by Tamsin Merchant, which doesn't sound like a familiar author to me. I immediately figured it out. I scanned this and I figured it out. It is a Arthurian legend retelling, and those I will always give a try. I always just want to see my little Arthurian trauma babies be put into different worlds and end up with the same outcome. A new tale that reimagines the young lives of Merlin, Arthur, and Guinevere and reveals the origins of maker magic. Gwyn has never wanted to act like a lady. She much prefers fighting with her wooden sword and weaving intricate tapestries. When her father takes her to join the royal court in Tintagel, Gwyn meets a young boy with unique powers, in desperate need of her help. They flee Tintagel together, and before long, the young Prince Arthur joins them. Sure, kid, let's go on a fantasy adventure. If you've ever read the original King Arthur, then you know why I am the way I am, and if you haven't, I do recommend it, but there's so many beautiful and wonderful retellings of this world, and it usually ends the same way. But I'm excited. Is this middle grade, or is, because that can make a difference. Doesn't say. We've got no information on anything genre or age. I guess we'll just find out as it gets closer. Sylvia Morena Garcia, auto by author. Gorgeous cover. This is the second cover where birds are pinned onto the cover. What's going on with that? Horror, fantasy, witches, historical. Let's give a little bit of a look. Back then, when I was a young woman, there were still witches. That was how Nana Alba always began the stories she told her great-granddaughter, Minerva. Stories that have stayed with Minerva all her life. Perhaps that's why Minerva has become a graduate student focused on the history of horror literature and in researching the life of Beatrice Tremblay, an obscure author of macabre tales. This comes out on July 15th, and Sylvia Morena Garcia has made a name for herself definitely within the horror genre, as well as adding Mexican mythology into her work, and it's gorgeous. She does stunning things. So I'm excited for this. A Treachery of Swans. I just saw this mentioned a lot, and it kind of just like kept sticking in my head, so I stuck it in here. An enthralling sapphic retelling of Swan Lake for fans of Alison Saft and V.E. Schwab. Magic has long been outlawed in Auril. Odile has always known she'd been the one to restore it. Raised by a sorcerer, Odile has spent years preparing for the heist of a lifetime. It's perfectly simple. Impersonate a princess, infiltrate the palace, steal the king's enchanted crown, and restore magic to the kingdom. But when the king is unexpectedly murdered, she's forced to recruit the help of Marie Odette, the real princess, and the two begin to unravel a web of lies and deceit that leaves Odile uncertain of who to trust. Soon, though, Odile must decide her mission or the girl she falls for. Ooh, this sounded really good. I was not expecting to be as drawn in by it, but I really love the setup and premise. I love the heist, all the magic, and the romance. It comes out July 29th and is just, looks like a little under 400 pages. It also said I read this. I did not read this. This is such a lie. A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reed. Again, Ava Reed. I actually already pre-ordered this, the physical copy of this. I spent my good hard-earned money, my good hard-earned yen to get this book in USD because I was not expecting A Study in Drowning to get a second book. My heart is beating fast even thinking about the fact that I get to have this book. I have not read what it's about yet. There was a tagline like sold me, and then I saw it was the sequel to this. It was something like, just because you love her doesn't mean you can save her, or something like that. And I was just like, whoa. Don't want you to get any spoilers, so I'll go to this page, but yeah. Next, we are back to Maggie Stiefvater, but we're also back to well-treaded ground. This is The Raven Boys, the graphic novel. August 5th is a good day for me. I think that The Raven Boys will translate into a graphic novel incredibly well. If you don't know about The Raven Boys, it is a contemporary magical realism following a group of friends, very found family-esque, as they go and search for a dead Welsh king. The story itself is less about the plot and more about the characters finding themselves out. It's one of my favorites, and I'm really excited to see this adapted. Next, another auto by author. This is T. Kingfisher, and it's Hemlock and Silver, which is a lovely name. It says, Healer Anya knows little of politics but much about poisons. When she is summoned to treat the mysterious illness affecting the king's daughter, she finds herself against the clock, desperate to track down the source of the poison killing Princess Snow. But the chance discovery of a strange alternate world inside a magic mirror leads Anya to darker discoveries, including what really happened to Snow's dead sister, Rose, and why their mother seemingly went mad and cut out her heart. Okay, as it says above, just jumped right in, it seems like it's a Snow White retelling, steeped in poison, intrigue, and treason of the most magical kind. T. Kingfisher does absolutely wonderful things with dark fantasy. She can make something really, really really dark, horrific even, fantasy, and incredibly cozy. So you'll be snuggled up, horrified, and mystically mystified. And this comes out August 19th. I can't believe I have to wait this long. This feels so far away. Next we have Catabas by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang obviously wrote Babel as well as Yellowface, an amazing author, and I put this on my list simply because this was written by her. It looks like it's a bit academic and centered around magic, which is great. I know she can write an academic setting incredibly well as a magic base, and I'll leave it up in case you want to look at it, but I'm not going to actually read more. I'm already excited, so I want to leave it there. Okay, we are nearing the end. We only have so many left. The Maiden and Her Monster by Maddie Martinez. No cover released yet. Horror, lesbian, adult. I'm noticing a lot of fantasy, horror, lesbian, queer stuff on my list this year, which, you know, good for me. I don't think there's been as much in past years, so I'm really moving into this niche and I'm here for it. A sapphic fantasy reimagining of the Jewish myth of Gollum for fans of Catherine Arden, huge fan, Naomi Novik, and Ava Reed. Yep. Okay, cool. This is why it's here. This is why we're anticipating. When a young woman is forced to venture into a cursed forest to capture the monster hunting girls of her village, she discovers a disgraced golem ready to confess, but only if she agrees to help fulfill an ancient promise first, a bargain that unravels a much more dangerous threat to her people and forces her to face growing feelings for the very creature she was taught to fear. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that to where the romance was. Oh, well, it's called A Maiden and Her Monster. That's just me not being very observant. This comes out September 9th. I don't think we get any more releases past September in my list, so I might do another reading list for the second half of the year that's more in depth. Hot Wax by M.L. Rio is on my list because M.L. Rio has been on a lot of other people's lists for their other books. It says a nostalgic love letter to the 90s rock scene. Hot Wax follows a band of rocker misfits, rivals and trailblazers on the tour that could have catapulted them to stardom if it hadn't have come crashing down. If We Were Villains and Graveyard Shift, highly recommended to me constantly. So this might be my first. I might pick one of these up before Hot Wax. It seems within the style and genre of things I might like. I also know that this isn't the final cover, but I hope that this cover is similar to what we actually get because it's kind of cool. I mean, if this was the cover, I would have already put it on this list. I'm interested to see what the final cover is. Next, oh, Cleopatra. There's not much about this one, but I adore Cleopatra, like the actual history of Cleopatra. She's so underrated as like just a human being in general. And this is by the same author as the Feybound series. So I thought it was really interesting that she had a book on Cleopatra and that it already has a cover. So this says, Cleopatra will retell the story of Egypt's most famous queen. It opens at the moment she discovers that her father has died and she is pharaoh. And that's all we know. And that's all I need to know. This next one is just a reminder that the second in the Moonfall series, The Ballad of Falling Dragons by Sarah A. Parker, is coming out. This is not the cover, though it is very cute with all the little dragons around it. If you're not familiar, it's the sequel to When the Moon Hatched, which is a gigantic chonker. Seeing that in person, I was like, holy crap, all you guys are reading this that fast? And then finally in October, oh, we do have one October release. We have Savage Blooms by S.T. Gibson. I have really enjoyed S.T. Gibson books in the past. Dowry of Blood, An Education in Malice. Evocations is another one I'm really interested in. The synopsis is really short, obviously, because it's just freshly out, but it says, Adam has been in love with his best friend Nicola since college, but the closest he's come to admitting his feelings is inviting her to travel with him to Scotland in search of a legendary cave from his grandfather's bedtime stories. When a storm washes out the road, Adam and Nicola find themselves at the mercy of Eileen, an eccentric aristocrat, and Finley, her brooding gameskeeper. The Americans quickly get more than they bargained for as they become entangled in Eileen Finley's world of mind games, kink, and ancient enchantment. Oh my god. This seemed like kind of contemporary romance until the very end. Very excited to see where this goes. Fantasy, romance, adult, gothic, queer, LGBT, and that is it. Oh, no, there's one more. I am putting this on my list in the off chance that Tamsin Muir is just messing with us and that the third book from Gideon the Ninth, Electo, comes out. We have no cover. We have no synopsis. We have no promises. Everything has been dead silent. There is no reason why Electo should be on this list or any of the lists I've seen it on so far. I'm putting it on my list because I'm anticipating it at all times, forever. Electo the Ninth is the last book I will be putting on this list and there is no date. There's only desperation. Now, I'm actually finished. This is going to be a nightmare to edit, but I look forward to when it's finally out and I can hear what books you guys are looking forward to. So go ahead and leave me some of your most anticipated releases down below. If you can't be bothered, go ahead and leave the skull emoji because I really want to just put that manifestation energy out there that we're getting Electo, because all of the rest of these seem pretty promising to come out this year. I'm very, very excited for it. Whether you do or not, I hope you enjoy the sun or more stars wherever you are. And until next time, bye!